My goodness, it's been good to be with you this afternoon, and I know that as we continue in this conference, that we're going to have some very, very good speakers to come. Right now we have Pastor Bob Armstrong. He is at the Willows in Langley, British Columbia. He's come a long way, and I know that he's going to share with us today. His topic is healthy communication. We're talking about relationships, and I know that you're going to enjoy everything he has to say. Let's give it up for Pastor Bob.
Thank you for your warm welcome. It's good to be with you today. As is mentioned, we're going to be talking about healthy communication. You know, my wife has got me all figured out. She knows if she can get me mad just before guests come over to our house, I will clean it. Rather than verbalize how I am feeling toward her, I act it out by cleaning the house. And this kind of thing is not new or unique to me. We all communicate in ways other than words. Some people communicate through the deadly weapon of silence. They don't speak for hours or days or weeks, months, or sometimes years at a time. Others communicate by slamming kitchen cupboards or other doors in the house or car. Many communicate through body language and facial expressions. The jaw that is twitching and the vein pulsating out of the side of your neck is clearly communicating something. These forms of communication, along with others such as speaking through another person or sarcasm, dismissive gestures with your hand expressing contempt or sulking and moping around, are not productive. They do not lead to healthy relationships. Rather than speak the truth in love, as Paul instructs in Ephesians 4:15, some of us opt for a backdoor route in an attempt to keep the peace. According to Bill Hybels in his book Honest to God, hint dropping and manipulation are two ways people communicate. Another is communicating through guilt. After all I've done for you, you can't do this one small thing for me. Others communicate through intimidation by getting loud, aggressive, or threatening. And still others communicate through stonewalling. This is the person who pouts and groans for all to hear but does not verbalize their concerns. None of these forms of communication lead to healthy relationships. As a matter of fact, they backfire on the ones who are using them as an attempt to keep the peace. When people pick up on the hint-dropping, manipulative, and guilt-tripping games, they become angry and peace is short-lived. The intimidator may get his or her way, but at a cost. Often the atmosphere created in this relationship is one of walking around on eggshells and therefore a reluctance to communicate authentically. The Stonewallers' dramatics may get an Academy Award, but their silence only frustrates the one attempting to address an issue. In the Feeling Good Handbook that Dr. David Burns wrote, he says this: for relationships to grow and become all they are designed to be, two properties are required. You express your feelings openly and directly, and you encourage the other person to express his or her feelings. You say how you are thinking and feeling, and you try to listen and understand what the other person is thinking and feeling. According to this definition, the ideas and feelings of both are important. Hybels calls these two properties of healthy communication truth-telling and truth-hearing. So how do we approach telling the truth in love? Reflect on these words of the Apostle Paul in Colossians 4 and 6. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. The word grace speaks to me of the attitude with which we are to approach communication. We want to be careful to approach others in humility rather than coming from a stance of superiority. We want to remember that grace has been extended to us on many occasions, and because of that, seek to extend the same to others. Paul instructs us in Ephesians 4 and 32 to be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Self-confrontation precedes confrontation with another. Once your attitude has been checked, identify the issue needing to be communicated. My example of cleaning the house when I'm mad is simply a way I was avoiding the issue. We must stop and get in touch with what has pushed our buttons. Next, choose an appropriate time to communicate. Because I am not a night person, late in the evening is not a good time for my wife to engage me about matters of the heart. Although she comes to life after 11 p.m., I do not. So find a time where you are both able to give 100% of your time and attention to the conversation. Timing is everything. Solomon said there is a time for everything, a time to be silent, and a time to speak. You may have heard of the two men in jail awaiting sentencing. One day one of them walked by the other cell escorted by a guard, and noticing him, his fellow prisoner shouted, "Where are you going?" "To the electric chair," was his response. "Wow," he said, "more power to you." Sometimes it's better to be silent than to use inappropriate words that leave us feeling missed and minimized. Although we may be trying to help the person, it can actually leave them feeling worse about their situation. During one of my frequent stops at Dairy Queen, I picked up a coffee newspaper, and in the famous quote section I read these words, "Some people speak from experience, others from experience don't speak." My dad taught me this lesson. Soon after I got my driver's license at 16 years of age, I got into a car accident which was totally my fault. The accident took place 4 blocks from my house, and that being the case, I told the guy whom I had hit to wait there, and I ran back to get my dad. I ran home in about 4 seconds, got my dad, and he came to take care of the situation. He handled it so well. He dealt with the man, he brought me home, and he never said one word about the accident for the rest of my life. He saw how shaken up I was at the time and wisely concluded that I did not need to hear another word, especially words of condemnation. Check your attitude, identify the issue, choose an appropriate time, and then, if it is possible, meet face to face. Some people would rather communicate through email, text messaging, or by telephone, but these are not the best forms of communication. The main reason for this is because they don't convey emotion well. Face to face, you can engage emotion by watching body language. If you see a facial expression that doesn't quite convince you the issue is resolved, you can ask for clarification. Next, affirm the relationship. You do this by saying something like, "I have a concern that is getting in the way of our relationship, and therefore would like to talk about it so we can clear it up and get back to where we were." The Bible verses quoted earlier speak of treating people with dignity, respect, and kindness. And Paul sums it up wonderfully in Ephesians 4:29, where he says, "What comes out of your mouths is to be helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Bruce Weinstein, in Life's Principles, Feeling Good About Doing Good, says the word benefit comes from the Latin word bene, which means good. That is to say, whenever we benefit someone or something else, we contribute toward its flourishing. Like watering a plant gives it one of the elements necessary for a plant to grow, we are to communicate words that will help us grow and flourish in our relationships. Finally, after checking your attitude, identifying the issue, choosing an appropriate time, affirming the relationship, you communicate your concerns with I statements. I statements work well because they shift the emphasis off blaming, which can easily result in defensiveness, to how the person feels about the behavior. An I statement would sound something like this: "When you leave the kitchen in a mess, I feel taken advantage of because then I have to spend my time and energy cleaning up after you. I would like you to put the food away in the fridge and the dishes in the dishwasher. If you would commit to doing this, it would be much appreciated." In addition to the words we use, communication is enhanced by our knowing and understanding who it is we're conversing with. Part of the understanding of others and us comes in recognizing the differences between the introvert and the extrovert personality as they pertain to communication. If you are an introvert, let the extrovert know that you are processing the information so your lack of immediate response is not misinterpreted as you don't care. And if you are an extrovert, let the introvert know that you are not nagging or pressuring, but just thinking out loud. Someone said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." This brings us to the other side of healthy communication, truth hearing. Now, when it comes to truth hearing, some of us can relate to the classic scene at the end of the movie A Few Good Men. Playing the senior military officer Jack Nicholson, when being pressed for a truthful testimony, shouts out, "The truth, you can't handle the truth." In reality, truth can be tough to take. And yet often within words spoken to us in love are found nuggets of wisdom that move us towards growth. The Bible contains many verses that illustrate this truth. Take the time to let these verses sink in. The first is from Proverbs 15:31-32. "He who listens to a life-giving rebuke will be at home among the wise. He who ignores discipline despises himself, and whoever heeds correction gains understanding." This is Proverbs 12:1. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. That is in the Bible, in the New International Version. Proverbs 12:15 says, the way of a fool seems right to him, but a wise man listens to advice. Proverbs 18:13 says, he who answers before listening, that is his folly and shame. Ouch. A little too close to home. And last, James 1:19-19 says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, for man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Listening not only makes someone feel valued, but in listening we may hear a life-giving truth that can lead us to another level of personal growth and maturity that will no doubt impact the depth of our relationships. Let me give you some tips for listening. The first is listen with your whole being. This means getting rid of distractions such as turning the television, the computer, the cell phone, the iPod, or BlackBerry off, or putting down your newspaper or book. Listen without passing judgment. Listen for the words and their meaning. Be patient as thoughts and emotions are put into words. Watch for body language and gestures that are also communicating. Clear your mind of any other thoughts, and guard against practicing a response in your mind while the other person is talking. Try not to interrupt unless you need clarification. Remember not to finish each other's sentences. Listen without providing a solution to fix the problem. Listen without drawing premature conclusions. Hold back from telling them how they should feel. Be open to seeing the other person's point of view. Be careful not to miss a chance to listen by changing the subject, and refrain from giving pat answers or advice. Share your opinion only at the invitation of the other party. Check for accuracy. During an appropriate break in the conversation, you may want to say something like this: I just want to make sure I am clear about what you are saying. Are you saying? And lastly, stay away from other forms of communication killers, such as labeling or distracting, humoring, teasing, or sympathizing. You know, now that I've caught on to my wife's house cleaning ploy, I have decided to change my style of communication. Rather than act my feelings out, I am opting for a healthier communication of truth-telling and truth-hearing. Why? Because anything is better than cleaning.